Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform for thought leaders to share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in real world. And I'm your host, Helen Yu. Today's topic is data-driven digital resilience. Our guest speaker is Frank Dimina, SVP and General Manager, Americas and Public Sector at Splunk. Hello, Frank. Welcome to CXO Spice.
Hi, Helen. Thanks for having me on. I've been seeing many episodes. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So let's start by getting to know you better, Frank. Could you tell us more about you and your role at Splunk?
Sure. I lead the Americas organization at Splunk, which is about 1,500 folks. I've been at Splunk about 10 years, and we get the luxury of helping many organizations, government organizations, commercial organizations, figure out how to use their data to drive mission outcomes, to drive business outcomes. And it's a really exciting body of work, and we have a lot of fun doing it. We get really close to our customers. And I think the best part of it is the communities we get to be part of, and seeing what those communities do when they unlock the power of their data.
Love that. 1,500 people is bigger than many companies. That's a lot of responsibility.
There's no boring days, no repeats, no same day twice. It's been a fun 10 years.
Oh, yeah. So, Frank, we've been hearing so much about digital resilience lately, especially as organizations face more sophisticated cyber threats. Could you explain what digital resilience means in today's context?
Sure. Let me give the easiest answer and then an example. So at its core, when we talk about digital resilience, we're talking about an organization's ability to respond to an adverse event. And whatever that adverse event can be, not just cyber events, can be any recourse, because it's not just about how well we can prevent incidents, it's about how organizations can respond. That's the test of their digital resilience. Did we survive, and was our business impacted? If you think about the roles of many CXOs today, take the CISO, for example, their responsibilities are growing to become more cross-functional. They have to ensure their organization, their business continues in any type of adverse condition. It could be a cyber event, it could just be some kind of outage, it could be a fraud event, it could be a government-generated event.
It could be a natural disaster, right?
Exactly, right? It could be BCP. It's about keeping your organization running and your mission running for a public sector organization. And I think this is a board level issue now. The boards are demanding more from the C-suite, that they can respond to any type of event, attack. Let me give you an example. So last July, you may remember, I was traveling July 19th, and I had a front row seat to the first worldwide digital resilience test. It was a vendor who had an issue in their software, you may remember. I was traveling when I was about to fly home that morning, and the whole airport came to a screeching halt. No flights were getting out. I was stuck there watching all the chaos go on. And if you think about what happened that day, it wasn't just a bunch of flight delays, and it wasn't a cyber event. It wasn't just an IT event, but it was a global resilience test. The organizations that got through that event quickly were ones that had put investments in and had done work to be digitally resilient. And for some organizations, that day was just a blip. But for some, like the airline I was on, I looked it up later. It cost them $500 million that day.
Oh, yeah. I remember
that
day.
Material event.
Yeah, I remember that day, Frank. I couldn't check into my hotel. It was like 4-hour wait time for checking into my hotel that day. So
right. And I've talked to so many folks like yourself, customers that we bonded over what we were doing that day. And it's fun stories, but what everyone was trying to figure out, organizations, government customers, people serving constituents, like, was my business impacted? Was my mission continuing? Were we still operational? Did our users, did our customers have downtime? That's digital resilience.
Oh, yeah. I love your definition of digital resilience. And so, speaking of that, data is at the heart of resilience strategies today, right? What is the role of data in achieving digital resilience?
I like to say that data is the digital currency to fund digital resilience. So how do we get there? And I'll also say the organizations that have the most digital currency are the ones that are winning in the market, in surviving any adverse conditions, in competition. If you take cyber, let's talk about cyber incidents for a minute. The threats that get through, the ones that succeed, are because they're not detected. And the bulk of the damage of those events is actually not the initial incident, it's the damage that occurs in the time that they go undetected. And all of that occurs because those attacks, those events are hiding in data that's not being monitored. So how do you achieve digital resilience? You have to have data, and your ability to detect, manage, respond to anomalies in your data, that's how you get to digital resilience. But the real question then becomes, where do I focus? And I often had this conversation with some of our customers that not all the anomalies you see in your data are security incidents, but every security incident starts with an anomaly. Right? And those anomalies are everywhere. You have to be monitoring your data. It can be an unusual traffic pattern. It can be a spike in resources that are being used. It can be some odd user behaviors. Many of those are harmless, benign, could be system updates or just some congestion on your network. But those anomalies in your data are your early indicators that you have some events going on, and how quickly you can detect them and respond to them is a test of your digital resilience. I think the challenge then becomes, how do you know which ones are benign and which ones are the ones to worry about? And that's where data comes in. And that's why it's the digital currency to fund your digital resilience. It helps you understand the difference between those benign events and those adverse effects. And it gives you confidence too. Like if you have a really great data management program, that's where you get confidence in the fidelity of the data you're looking at. And I often call that getting to a state of data leverage, where you're getting real value, real insights from your own data.
Well, that's well said. Actually, it's a great segue for my next question, right? With the rise of AI, vulnerability has also increased. So speaking of this anomaly versus actual threats, how can organizations better leverage their security data to differentiate between the two?
I'll answer a little tactical answer, right? And I think there's two aspects to it. It sounds like a shameless plug, but it's not here. So I think first, having a single data platform is foundational to be able to leverage your data to get insights. But second is having what we often call a data tiering approach or a data management strategy is foundational. Now, when I say a single data platform, it can be any vendor. Like obviously Splunk has a great solution there. I'm a big fan of that. I've been working on it for 10 years. But regardless of the vendor, having a single platform is foundational. It's the right approach. Bringing together all your security data, all your IT data into that single platform enables multiple teams from different cross-functional areas to work together and correlate all different data sources. Gives you that single source of truth. Eliminates finger pointing. We often talk about mean time to innocence, being able to prove it's not your team or your function. And doing that sounds simple today. Everyone talks about, I'm just going to put all my data somewhere, but it's really still a challenge for big organizations for many reasons, right? You've got challenges with just getting data into a single source. But then it becomes about knowing, well, which data should I collect? Collecting data can be expensive. Do I need this data? Do I need to store it? Or do I need the data itself? Or do I need aspects of the data? Do I just, like a great example is firewall logs. Like if you collected all of the dropped logs at your firewall, that would be an immense volume of data. You probably don't necessarily need that data, but you might want metrics about it. How many dropped logs did I have? Did they happen at certain times of the day? So the metadata can be sometimes more valuable than the data itself. And I bring all that up. It's just challenges to accomplishing that single data platform. Data gravity is another challenge, right? Moving data around has costs and takes time. So getting it all into one place, I think, is foundational answer number one. And then the second piece of that is having that tiering data management strategy. And what I mean by that is, how do you find that needle in the stack of needles? There's a lot of technology helping there, right? Started with data science, machine learning came in, AI is now starting to play a role, as you mentioned, it's helping accelerate it. But you have to really put some thought in ahead of time to where the value is in my data, which pieces of data and data sources do I want to store? And then we could also talk about like why some organizations struggle with that. But I think that's the foundational piece to achieving that stated data leverage.
Oh yeah, I can relate to what you just said. I've been working with a global bank. They have 300 data systems there, right? It's like finding a needle in a haystack. So I mean, the two things you mentioned really resonate with me: the single data platform plus the tiering data management strategy. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
that.
Well, and you triggered another thought. You mentioned AI, right? And how does
Yeah.
technology help? Well, data science has been working on this a long time. Machine learning is foundational to AI. We do something with machine learning, and something that many security organizations are starting to do, and that's just using automated tools like machine learning to weight your risk differently. So when an event comes in, you can use some data science to give your operators, your analysts,
Mhm.
some head start, right? So
Mhm.
is this a riskier alert than my others? We call that risk-based alerting, and it's a great way to make better use of your human capital by using things like machine learning and AI to give them
Mhm.
that pre-curated weighting of what things to look at.
Yeah, but it's fundamental to understand what data is most critical, and then also what data set you use to feed the AI and machine learning to make it represent,
Yeah.
what you really try to really use the data for modeling or algorithms. So could you talk a little bit about how companies can determine what data most critical?
Yeah, we talk to a lot of customers, partners, organizations that are going through this journey. And you have to start, I briefly mentioned this earlier, with what we call a data management strategy, a data tiering strategy. Those are synonymous terms.
Mhm.
And well, it makes me think of some research. So I have some dated research we did a few years ago about how organizations use data when they run analytics. What we found is 95% of all types of searches, analytics runs on data that's 24 hours or less old.
Mm.
The next 4% of activity analytics is on data that's under 30 days old. But
Mm.
only 1% of what people do, their interactions, their analytics actually occurs on data over a year.
Mm.
But if you look at how organizations typically store data, they store tons and tons of data that's many years old. And there may be a business requirement for that, but a lot of that cost goes into storing data that's never used. And so we work with customers. Something we've spent years developing is how do you develop that data strategy, data management is what data is really important that I should keep. So, for example, in cybersecurity, there's probably 5 data sources that are super critical. Your user and identity information,
Mm.
your endpoint, your system information, your network, what's going on in your network, and then your web and application data, like what's going on in the apps that we serve, and of course, if you have a database layer.
Mhm.
All of those are essential to any type of insights in security, but also in IT and how my systems are performing, what my user experience is, the digital experience. Those are what I would call high value data sources. And they unlock multiple use cases, security use cases, IT management use cases, because those are the data sources that tell you our system's up and running, that I have an incident, that I potentially have a breach. And so when we say high value, what we mean by that is you get reuse. That data can be used for multiple purposes. And I know it's a long-winded answer, but this is what we mean when we talk about developing a data management strategy, identifying those data sources that map to those use cases that you considered high value. Do I need the data or do I just need some summary information about it? Do I need to keep it for 24 hours, 30 days, 2 years? Do I need it for real-time insights and then I can throw it away? Or do I need it for investigative work where I may need it for a longer time to go out and do some root cause analysis? There's no one answer to any organization. You have to really understand the mission, the business, the system, the requirements of that business. And that's where I would say for anyone listening to this, you really should seek out a partner who has experience doing this because it can be a heavy lift, but it will pay off. The ROI will help you get digital resilience and get you more value from your data.
Yeah, that's very good advice, Frank. I get it. There are 5 high value data when it comes to data security, right? The user identity, endpoint, network, app, and database. So I've been working with some customers, they struggle with zero trust strategy adoption. What is the role of data when implementing a zero trust strategy?
I've worked in the cyber industry for a while and in the data industry for the past 10 years. And I know those of us who work for vendors can sometimes get guilty of oversimplifying it. Like we can say, well, if you just have our product, it's going to solve your problem set here. And I think the important piece here in what you're talking about is that, zero trust is not, achieving a zero trust outcome is not about a product, it's an approach, right? And what I love about it, I've been in this field a while, is it's kind of the cyclical nature of what's old is new again. If you go back to the mainframe era, what mainframe security was all about, mandatory security policies, was very similar to zero trust, is that nothing is allowed unless explicitly granted permission. That's zero trust, right? It's about approaching your environment, having the mindset of, I need to identify who the person is and what they're trying to do before I give it permission to do that. But that, if you can get really good at that, you can really elevate security posture of your organization. And the foundational piece of doing that is visibility to your assets, visibility to your users, and what's happening on your network. Now, you can't get visibility without easy and real-time access to data. Without that, zero trust is not attainable. So similar, those data sources we talked about, the ones you just brought up again, those are the critical ones for achieving a zero trust program or approach. But you have to tie your business functions to know, like, is that full coverage of what I need to see? And if you do that really well, that is the best approach we've seen on mature organizations. It's about understanding your environment, being able to react faster. And that's just synonymous to what we talked about with digital resilience. It's your ability to respond to and withstand adverse events. And zero trust gives you the framework for doing that.
Well, you made it sound really easy and simple, and I'm glad to hear that. And I love the fact that you mentioned data trust is not a product, it's an approach, and you really need the real-time data access in order to make that happen, right? So is this as simple as categorizing your data, putting it in a giant data lake, or what makes the so difficult to implement in the real world then?
It's a great question. And I know we can make it sound easy. The challenge is in the execution, of course. I think there's value to data lakes, but it's more complicated than that. Even just collecting data today, it comes in so many formats. It's why something like Splunk was created. The ability to not have to worry about transforming your data before you can store it and analyze it. It's been a problem for a couple of decades now. But even if you put that aside and you take some of the modern data lakes, I talk to folks who are just starting that journey and they say things like, yeah, I get it. We just throw all my data in one place. Well, we were just talking about getting data into a system is still not easy. It is not a light lift. You have to go across cloud environments, hybrid environments, on-prem. You have regulatory issues, you have privacy issues, and then just the technology to move all this data around. Takes some work, takes some planning and thoughtfulness to pull off. And then once you do, let's say you can pull it off into a data lake, that's not going to solve all your problems. I think there's value there, especially for things like historical analysis, meeting compliance needs. Data lakes make it easy to store your data. But then the question comes is, can I run analytics with the speed and fidelity I need for X use case, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's application management, whether it's IT performance. And when you start breaking that down, right, you start thinking about all those use cases kind of boil down to, do I need real-time insights or do I need to do investigative work, like ask questions upon questions? Especially when you're like researching cyber issues, your first question leads to 10 more questions. You have to have a platform that can adapt and keep up with the iterations there. So a giant data lake without the ability to do those correlations, detections, to find anomalies faster is half a solution. It will be helpful for things like reporting for compliance, but I don't think it will help you achieve the digital resilience we're talking about. Because you really have to be able to extract that value on the fly without having to recode everything, re-engineer everything, re-architect everything. And to be clear, I think the power of the data we're talking about, organizations' own data, it's not in the capturing of it. The value, the digital currency is not having the data. It's your ability to use it and to use it quickly with confidence. That's data leverage.
That's really profound. As organizations really work toward the cyber resilience, how should they even think about integrating security and operations? Sorry, I have to redo this part. I think I got disrupted.
Yeah. It's a long question. Yes.
Yeah, that's really profound, Frank. As organizations work toward cyber resilience, how should they think about integrating security and operational data to drive faster recovery after an attack?
I think the guidance for cyber is the same as digital resilience. Like we're trying to quickly detect, respond, and mitigate the impact of any type of adverse event. And the guidance is very similar to just achieving digital resilience in general. Start with trying to accomplish a single data platform so we can have everyone working off that single source of truth. There's no debate over do we have accurate data and confidence in it. Then foundational becomes, do I have an opinion or a point of view on my data in tiers of what's high value, medium value, low value? So I've implemented that data management strategy. And by the way, that's really important to help break down silos, right? It's oftentimes organizations get halfway, but your data still ends up in silos. And in the cyber world, that's what attackers love. I started early in my career as a pen tester. If I could find gaps between where data was stored, that was the weakness. That was the path in that would be undetected. And that's what attackers do, is looking for your silos to exploit them. So you get your single data platform and your data tiering strategy in place, and now you've eliminated some data silos. And then it's about visibility. Can I do this all quicker and faster? My time, I worked in cyber operations for a while as an engineer, and security incidents almost always have an early warning sign in the operational data. And, a system started performing slowly, or there was some memory consumption was really high, whatever was going on. That's why breaking down these silos and getting that visibility is so important. And an example of that is, if I could just centralize all my security and IT performance data in one place, my open telemetry, all my system logs. Now I can do really great, deep root cause investigative work while also having that real-time insights. And that's breaking down also the silo. Traditionally, that was like SOC and NOC. I think we've seen some really mature organizations starting to move away from that mindset of I have to have a SOC and a NOC, and they're building fusion centers where IT ops and cybersecurity ops, it's all in one. They work together, and it's no, like the root cause of the event doesn't matter. It's that you have this adverse impact. But at the very least, right, we have to break down those silos. It's SOC and NOCs fully integrated, be able to provide both real-time and investigative insights by having a single data platform, by having a data tiering, data management strategy, and having that visibility that you need for a zero trust model.
Yeah, I echo what you just said there. The SOC and NOC integration is fundamental for digital resilience. With evolving companies' mandates across the US, what is your recommendation for companies to avoid compliance becoming just a checklist, right? Rather than emotion that enables resilience. I've been sitting on boards, so I can see the difference between how risk management being managed at different boards. Yeah.
I love this topic and this question because I've spent some time with boards, and often both when you're talking to, say, government agencies or particularly sometimes boards, compliance is seen as, it's the right answer to solving somebody's challenge. And I'll say compliance alone is not going to help you achieve digital resilience. But I'll say the reverse, that if you have a good resilience strategy, you will help drive compliance. And I don't want to be cynical. I think there's value to compliance efforts. I think of compliance similar to public vaccinations. Right? It raises the minimum standard. Right? Everyone has some protection. But I think too many organizations, and I see this often in government, get a little single-threaded on compliance. that they view it as, it's like when I only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's a great approach to getting foundational capabilities, but it's not going to get you all the way there. And it gets even more complicated when you think beyond cyber and things like business continuity, like, there's alphabet soup of regulations out there. I think if you look at all the major companies that were in the news for a breach over the past year, I would be willing to bet all of those organizations were compliant with whatever standard or regulation that they had to meet. So it's not that they failed at compliance, it's that was that enough to stop that breach? And you won't ever stop every breach, but again, digital resilience is how does your business keep operating during that event, and how quickly can you recover? So I think the shortcut answer is that compliance becomes your starting point, it's your foundation. Again, you implement a zero trust approach to minimize how far those events spread, and then you focus on using data to get maximum visibility. And that visibility starts with knowing your IT footprint really well, knowing your assets, which is a really important part of compliance. And that's why I said compliance won't always get you there, but if you have a great implementation on digital resilience, it will absolutely help you meet all your compliance mandates, because it solves blind spots. It's about using your data to get visibility.
That's really wise advice, right? You start with compliance and implement zero trust strategy, then you focus on data visibility. And then it sounds very simple, but those are the basic sequence, right? Or the steps you have to take in order to really achieve your digital resilience. So I'd love to talk to you for another hour, but our time, we have limited time today. Here comes to the last question. What is the most innovative way you've seen a customer leverage their Splunk data beyond the traditional activities?
Yeah, the absolute best part of my job is getting to see this in action. What organizations, public sector agencies do, customers do. I've seen government use it to help get veterans healthcare. We've seen it for really cool examples, large amusement parks. Using it from everything to managing lines for their customers to watching the temperature of refrigerators to ensure food safety. So like if you have a customer who has a bad food experience, they're not coming back to your park. But my favorite one, I think, I'll give you two quick ones. So we do some work with some of the world's biggest cruise lines, and that is a master class in what they do in building digital resilience. When you think about it, they're managing hundreds of these ships going to these are floating cities that have, commerce, internet, bandwidth applications, shipboard systems. Everything you do on these ships is an app as a consumer, as a customer. Everything's monetized. You have casinos. All of that is generating data. Those are all IP enabled. It's IoT data. There's applications, and every aspect has to work. If you don't have that great seamless experience, if it's not healthy and operating well, someone's going to be unhappy or have a bad experience, or everything from healthcare to how you get folks through customs. So they use data in our platforms to manage all of that, make sure they can easily and early identify any adverse event, any anomaly in real time. That may be an outage, maybe someone doing something they shouldn't. And it ensures that everyone has a premier experience and that folks are safe, that the systems keep operating as intended. It's a masterclass in digital resilience. The other quick one I'll just share with you because it's one of my personal favorites. I'm a big Formula One fan.
Oh yeah.
We partner with Formula One teams. They use data for everything. And many of the teams are doing this. It's been fun to watch and see how the sports evolve. For example, on a practice day, those teams will run 300 sensors on a car, and they're collecting everything. And they're looking for millisecond advantages, right? So they're very data driven to try and fine tune everything happening. But what folks don't know, or folks who may not be fans of sport follow, is that there's a massive IT effort going on underway. So every week, Formula One goes to another country and sets up. So every week they're building a new data center that they build and tear down in a week. And they're collecting terabytes and terabytes of data that they use to optimize their performance. doing that in extreme environments, like keeping that IT stack running, secure, performant, and up and down that quickly, you can't afford any downtime. So they also have leveraged data to become very resilient in that constant mobilization of a data center and making sure that the data is always available to the teams when they need it.
Well, those are fascinating stories, Frank. Now I appreciate more about what you do to make those our experience seamless, right? I think our people's today our patience run really thin. 2 second delay could feel like 2 hours sometimes,
Yes.
and so it's so important to have that resilience. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and valuable insights with us today, Frank. Here are 4 key takeaways from our conversation. Number one is a digital resilience, what that is, and then cyber, really what that means. I love your definition. You talk about it is an organization's ability to recover quickly from disruptions, right? And it does not have necessarily to be a cyber, it can be natural disaster or any events. So that's really important to know that. Second is the role of data in resilience. Here's a quote from you. Data is a digital currency to fund digital resilience. I love that. So it's so critical, right, to really have the data strategy. You mentioned about 2 things. Number one is the single data platform. Number two is making sure the tiering data management strategy to give you that real-time data visibility. Number three is about integrating security and operational data. Love what you said about the SOC and NOC integration, right? Integrating that security and operational data enhances cyber resilience by identifying the real threats, right? And then speeding the recovery. And then we talk about zero trust. So the zero trust is so important because it does require categorizing, securing data, even though the real-time monitoring can be complex. So you need to find an expert to help you with that. And lastly is the compliance and AI trends. You talk about companies should really integrate evolving compliance mandates into the broader risk management. It really not just about checkbox, right? Think about it. You should start with compliance, implement zero trust strategy. Then you really need the real-time data visibility to ensure that can be really executed within your operations. So thank you so much, Frank, for all the insights you share with us. I love the fact that you're not selling the product here. You're here to share your thought leadership and then share the real story. The F1, the Formula One story really resonate with me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.